Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. The transmission struck the chamber like a gunshot. Flickering visuals filled the massive central holo display, crackling through bursts of static. A battered figure, slumped against a metallic bulkhead, crimson skin smeared with dark blood, struggled to stay upright. One eye swollen shut, his chest rising and falling in jagged, uneven breaths. His voice came ragged, raw. They came out of nowhere. A pained cough. Kryn marauders, an ambush, no warnings, no demands. They cut through our escort before we could react. His breath stuttered. The camera wavered as he fought to steady it. They took General Zalvarak. The chamber erupted. Shouts clashed in overlapping waves, a sudden storm of voices demanding action, answers, war. "Impossible! A Kryn attack in our sector!" barked Councillor Drasikar, his translucent form rippling with cascading hues. "This is a direct violation of council law," hissed Gorvanak, a towering bipedal being with a chitinous exoskeleton and mandibles that clicked sharply with every word. "They've kidnapped a consular. If they do this to a high-ranking diplomat, they could do anything. We must mobilize," rumbled Tharik Doran, a thick-bodied Ivran with limbs resembling braided muscle fibers, his deep-set eyes burning with fury. The council leader, a towering Varak, slammed his three-clawed hand onto the console. His plated, quadrupedal form loomed over the chamber, ridges of bioluminescent spines along his back, flaring in a sharp display of authority. Beside him, Sorva Inek coiled slightly, her elongated form tensing like a drawn wire. The Seshari's smooth, scale-plated body undulated subtly under the chamber lights, her four delicate arms folded against her chest. "This transmission was received 3 hours ago," Sorva announced, her voice low but firm. "Sector Cathal 6, Council Territory." More shouts. Indignation boiled over. "They're provoking us into war!" spat Councillor Vraxol, his segmented body undulating as he loomed forward. The Koran's dozen eyes gleamed like shards of obsidian, his voice a strong series of clicks and growls. "Then let's give them one!" bellowed Kurgatan, a Melek brute, whose muscular arms ended in thick, bony blades, sharpened through generations of ritual combat. "They want war," rumbled a broad-shouldered Thalvarin, his sapphire-scaled fists clenching. "Then we wipe them out." Across the chamber, others hesitated. Councillor Jor-El Vis, his semi-transparent form swirling like liquid glass, shifted uneasily, his gelatinous tendrils curling inward. "Do you understand what you're saying?" His voice came in soft, vibrating pulses. Beside him, Eshar Vek, a Ytheri with elongated limbs and a crest of iridescent plates along his back, exhaled through his spherical vents. A direct council incursion into neutral space? His secondary eyelids flicked closed in a gesture of doubt. There would be no turning back. Javad stood at the chamber's edge, hands clasped behind his back, watching it unfold. He studied their faces, rage, fear, uncertainty, each of them playing their part in a script he had seen before. He had seen enough wars start like this. The same fire, the same blind fury. And he knew exactly how to smother it before it burned everything. He let them argue, let the tension build. Then, when the moment was right, he stepped forward. "Perhaps you're right." The words sliced through the chamber like a blade. Silence followed. Javad paced slowly, measured, his voice calm. "Perhaps we should respond with force. Show the Kryn the full weight of our power. March into the neutral zone. Destroy their strongholds. Burn their fleets." He turned, scanning the room, watching the certainty in some faces shift to something else. Hesitation. "But tell me," his gaze locked onto the Thal Varen, who had shouted first. "Who will send their fleet first?" The Thal Varen faltered. Javad stepped closer, eyes sharp. Who among us will be the one to cross the line, to start a war that won't last weeks, but years? Who will bear the responsibility for every system caught in the crossfire, for every neutral colony burned? Murmurs spread. You speak of war like it is a simple thing, Javad continued, voice unwavering. You think the Kryn are acting alone? That no faction will rise to aid them the moment we breach the neutral zone? He gestured toward the holo display. Because make no mistake, once we start this, there is no stopping it. Silence. A Lasser counselor, his form a mass of translucent, shifting membranes, undulated in slow waves of violet and blue. His voice, a deep chime-like resonance, filled the chamber. Then, what do you propose, Javad? Javad let the pause stretch. 12 hours. Scoffs. Some openly sneered. 12 hours? A reptilian delegate hissed. To what, talk them down? They kidnapped a general. Javad didn't flinch. 12 hours to decide how we act, what actions we take, if we send our fleets into war, or if we find another way. His gaze swept the room. Because once the first shot is fired, there's no calling it back. More hesitation now. Uncertainty. He had planted the doubt. The council leader, watching intently, nodded slowly. Then, after a long pause, 12 hours, he decreed. Javad dipped his head in silent acknowledgement. He didn't need to say anything else. The doubt was already there, eating at them. He turned and strode toward the exit, not looking back. He didn't need to. The arguing had already begun anew. He didn't wait for the arguments to restart. Halfway down the corridor, footsteps fell into step beside him. A smooth, deliberate stride. Javad didn't need to turn his head to know who it was. Counselor Velana Narek, her violet skin catching the cold reflections of the chamber lights. The swirling silver tattoos across her forehead pulsed with a soft luminescence, a cultural trait of the Visari. A bold move, she murmured, her elongated fingers laced together. Javad smirked, his pace never slowing. Wouldn't be the first. Velana's violet skin retained its soft radiance under the chamber's dim overhead lights, her silver tattoos shifting subtly with each step. I don't know what you're thinking, she said, voice lower now. But I'm with you. Javad glanced at her. Well, Velana... He quickened his pace, already calculating his next move. Then let's make sure to end this war before it even happens. Javad surged forward, his stride sharp, his mind already working ahead. The moment he stepped into his private quarters, he activated the encrypted comms line. The screen blinked twice before the call was rerouted through multiple relays, stripping any traceable signature. Then, the connection stabilized. A rugged face appeared. Admiral Andre Buchanan. His face was lined with battle-worn experience, his close-cropped iron-gray hair and dark eyes holding the weight of too many wars. Javad, Buchanan said, leaning forward, arms resting on his desk. I assume this isn't a social call. Javad got straight to the point. We have a problem. A flick of his fingers, and the transmission of Ambassador Orlan played once more. Buchanan's face hardened as he watched. The Kryn made their move, Javad continued. They took Zalvarak. The council is already split down the middle, and in a few hours, they'll start moving fleets. If that happens, we both know how this ends. Buchanan exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. A war. An unavoidable war, Javad's tone hardened. Unless we move now. Buchanan studied him for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. What are you proposing? A mission. Off the books. Javad's voice was firm, determined. A small team. Fast, surgical, invisible. We get in, extract Zalvarak, and get out before anyone even realizes we were there. Buchanan's fingers tapped against the metal armrest of his chair. This needs to be clean, Javad. If the council finds out we sent a human strike team into the neutral zone, They'll call it an act of aggression. They won't find out until we succeed, and if we bring General Zalvarak back alive, they won't complain. A moment of silence. Buchanan sighed, then nodded. You'll have my best. Before Javad could continue, a voice interrupted. Valana Narek, still standing near the entrance. I know someone who can help, she said, stepping fully into the room. A contact who knows the neutral zone better than anyone. Her silver tattoos pulsed softly, the Visari equivalent of a decision made. Javad turned to her. You trust them? She saved my life before, Valana said simply. She'll meet your team in the field. Javad looked back at Buchanan. That settles it. Buchanan nodded. I'll handle the rest. The screen cut to black. Buchanan let out a long breath, then turned in his seat. Across the room, Commander Hong Stab, his tactical officer, was already pulling up dossiers. We'll need a team that can operate under complete discretion, she said, her sharp features illuminated by the scrolling data streams. I assume you'll want special operations? Not just any, Buchanan cut in. They need to be ghosts. Stab didn't hesitate. Captain Jaron Kane. A flick of her fingers, and a profile opened. A hardened operative, ex-UE Marine Recon, decorated in planetary incursions, infiltration, high-risk recoveries. A soldier who worked best in the shadows. Buchanan gave a brief dip of his chin, then leaned back. Who else? Stab scrolled. Sir, what about the X-team? Buchanan frowned. X-team? You know, Chen, Rodriguez, Patel? Buchanan cut her off with a shake of his head. No. Everybody heard about them. Knows who they are. They look like celebrities, and not in a good way. We need more discretion here. Stab tilted her head slightly. You're right, sir. I'll call Kane immediately. No need. Buchanan reached for the secured console. I'll call him myself. The call came through Kane's private channel. He was sharpening a combat knife when the console lit up. He glanced at the name. Admiral Buchanan. He wiped the blade against his sleeve and answered. Sir. Buchanan's voice came steady, direct. How fast can you get a team together? Kane's brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't hesitate. How big? Small, precision strike, covert. That single word shifted everything. Kane's mind started working through names. He had men, good men, the kind that didn't exist on records. Buchanan's next words sealed it. We're going after Zalvarak. Kane stilled. He knew that name. Everyone did. The alien general who hated humans, the one who had spent years trying to keep them out of the council. If he had been kidnapped, it meant only one thing. Someone was trying to start a war, and Buchanan didn't want a war. Kane inhaled slowly, then exhaled. Send me the details. Buchanan nodded. Already on your way. The screen blinked off. Kane grabbed his comm and flicked through contacts. Each call was brief. Gear up. Meet me in 10. No questions. He moved with practiced ease, securing his weapons, checking every piece of equipment as muscle memory took over. Pulling on his reinforced tactical vest, he watched as his team started filtering in. They entered the room in pairs, the hum of the hangar bay a dull backdrop. No formalities, just the quiet weight of expectation. Steele leaned against a crate, arms crossed, lazily twirling a detonator between his fingers. Military or merc? Kane's jaw tightened. Diplomatic. Reaper, flipping his combat knife once, caught it effortlessly. Hell of a time to be saving politicians. Ghost ran a quick check on his rifle, eyes flicking over the scope like he was already plotting an overwatch position. Extraction plan? Kane exhaled. We'll form one on the way. For now, we rendezvous with an informant, neutral zone specialist. She has intel on the Kryn movements. Patch tightened the straps on his field kit, giving Kane a skeptical look. We trust her? Kane met his eyes. Valana does. That was enough for now. Valana didn't trust easily. If she vouched for someone, it carried weight. Sergeant Evan Steele Carter exhaled sharply. So, let me get this straight. We're saving the guy who spent years trying to keep us out of the council? Ghost rolled a shoulder. As long as he's breathing when we get him out, that's all that matters. Kane looked them over. No hesitation, no doubts. We have less than 10 hours. We leave in 30. The team broke off, prepping for departure. Kane grabbed his rifle, slinging it over his shoulder as he strode toward the hangar. This was the job, and they were the only ones who could do it. The Raven, a sleek UED stealth corvette, hummed with low power as it cut through the black void of deep space. The dim red lighting of the crew bay cast long shadows across the 5 figures seated along the reinforced hull. The silence was thick, only broken by the rhythmic clank of Kane checking his sidearm. Reaper sat forward, fingers tracing the edge of his combat knife absent-mindedly. "So," he muttered, voice low, calculated. "Where's our informant?" "She'll meet us en route," Kane replied, not looking up. His focus was on the data pad in his hands, reviewing the encrypted packet Buchanan had just sent. Steele adjusted the strap on his vest, checking the placement of his explosives. "You sure she's reliable?" Kane didn't look up. "We'll find out soon." Reaper let out a quiet scoff. "And if she's not?" Kane's voice stayed flat. "Then I put a bullet in her myself." Patch gave a dry chuckle, leaning back. Reassuring. Ghost remained silent, rifle resting against his knee, visor pulled down over his eyes. He wasn't talking, but Kane knew he was listening to every word. The ship jolted slightly as the FTL drive disengaged. The comm crackled to life. "Approaching rendezvous coordinates. You're not gonna like what's waiting." Kane tapped the comm. "Define." "A single fighter, modified light runner, no escort. She's alone." A moment of silence. "Bring her in," Kane ordered. The cabin vibrated as the ship's external bay doors opened. Moments later, the faint hiss of depressurization signaled their new guest's arrival. The bulkhead slid open, and the room's dim red light stretched long shadows as the newcomer stepped inside. Tall and lean, the Zarlekian woman moved with an effortless grace, her deep-set, bronze-hued eyes scanning the room like she was taking inventory. Her skin, a muted shade of obsidian with faint metallic undertones, gave her an almost sculpted appearance under the Corvette's lighting. She paused, gaze settling on Kane. "Humans." Her voice carried a hint of amusement. "I expected more skepticism." Steele adjusted the strap on his vest, but didn't comment. Kane glanced at him, then at the rest of the team, before stepping forward. "You're the contact?" She nodded. "Sura Kalir. Valana said you'd need someone who knew the Kalor Reach inside and out." Patch finally spoke, but his voice held a trace of doubt. "If she sent you, that means she trusts you." He leaned back slightly. "Valana doesn't gamble, especially not with us." Kane didn't move, his arms still crossed. "Yeah? That's assuming she didn't just roll the dice on someone desperate enough to sell us out." Sura met his stare without flinching. "If that were the case, I wouldn't have come alone." A beat of silence. Kane's expression didn't shift. "Fair enough," he said at last. Patch tilted his head. "You from there?" Sura's glowing eyes flicked to him. "Grew up there, smuggled through there, killed through there." Reaper smirked. "Sounds like our kind of guide." Kane cut through the tension. "You got anything we can use?" Sura pulled a compact hollow device from her belt, activating it with a flick of her wrist. A 3-dimensional star map unfolded before them. "The Kryn don't operate alone," she said. "They've got allies, smugglers, mercs. I dug around after Valana contacted me. Word is they're operating out of Ragzir, an old industrial colony, abandoned after a trade collapse. It's lawless, off-grid, and crawling with criminals." Kane studied the map. "You sure Zalvarak's there?" Sura's eyes narrowed, her tone sharpening. "I made some calls, cross-checked intercepted chatter from local pirate bands. Every piece of intel says they're holding someone important there." Ghost finally spoke, Not enough. Sura arched a brow. Excuse me. Ghost didn't look up. Intel's solid, but vague. We need confirmation before we walk in and get lit up. Kane nodded. Agreed. He tapped his comm. Buchanan, you copy? The Admiral's voice came through instantly. Go ahead. Run deep scans over Ragzir. Any recent wreckage? Any comm intercepts mentioning Kryn fleet activity? A brief pause. Stand by. The team waited. Tension coiled like a spring. Then, got something. Wreckage near Kalor Reach, about 2 sectors out. Matched to a Rudrak diplomatic escort. Looks like someone hit them hard and fast. Sura's expression darkened. That's confirmation enough. Buchanan continued. If he's alive, that's where he is. I'll patch the full report through to your systems. Kane exhaled. Understood. Buchanan's voice was firm. Kane, get him out. Quietly. The channel cut. The room sat in silence. Steele broke it first. Well, shit. Reaper stood, cracking his knuckles. Guess we're going to Ragzir. Kane nodded. Yeah, time to determine how we're gonna pull this off. The Raven dropped out of FTL above Vorlon 3, a dying industrial colony at the edge of the Kalor Reach. From orbit, the planet was a rust-colored wasteland, broken by sprawling ruins of long-abandoned mining facilities and skeletal megastructures left to decay. Kane stood at the ship's viewport, scanning the planet's surface as data scrolled across the HUD overlay in his helmet. The place was dead, except for one concentrated cluster of activity. There, Ghost muttered, zooming in on a flickering thermal signature. Heat sources, energy emissions, multiple vehicles. Looks like they've repurposed an old extraction plant outside the main settlement. Steele adjusted his combat harness. Factory means tight corridors, fortified positions. If they know we're coming, we're walking into a kill box. They don't know, Kane said. Not yet. Sura stepped forward, arms crossed. Then let's not give them the chance. We land cold, approach on foot. If they spot us early, this gets messy. Reaper grinned, cracking his knuckles. Messy's fine. Kane ignored him. We drop in 5 clicks out. Move quietly. No ship support unless absolutely necessary. In and out before they realize what hit them. Patch double-checked his field kit, adjusting the med straps. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Kane turned to his team. Strap in. The Vorlon air was thick with dust, the distant remnants of industrial pollution hanging low over the landscape like an eternal smog. Their descent pod had landed in a dry riverbed, its impact softened by years of eroded terrain. The team moved quickly, spreading into a staggered formation, weapons up. Their dark armor blended into the rust-red rock formations, their footfalls nearly silent on the cracked ground. Sura took point, leading them through abandoned structures that had long since been stripped of anything valuable. Scorch marks lined the walls, remnants of old firefights, gangs staking and losing territory. Ghost's voice came through their comms. I've got movement. North quadrant. Elevated position. Kane signaled for a halt. They crouched low behind a crumbling storage silo as Ghost adjusted his visor. 1 sentry, Kryn, rifle slung low. Doesn't look alert. Reaper smirked. I'll handle it. Before Kane could respond, Reaper was moving, slipping between the debris with the precision of a predator. The Kryn barely had time to register the shadow before Reaper's blade slid under its jaw, severing vocal cords before it could make a sound. The body hit the ground softly. No alarm. Sura arched a brow. You're good. Reaper wiped the blade clean. You're welcome. They pressed forward, keeping to the cover of half-buried cargo haulers and rusted-out pipelines leading to the factory's outskirts. The place loomed ahead, massive, its faded insignia barely visible through years of decay. Steele murmured, "Feels too easy." It was. They didn't hear the first shot. They felt it. A shockwave tore through the ground, sending dust and debris flying. Ghost barely managed to roll behind cover as the space he'd been standing on erupted into shrapnel. Then the sky lit up, Plasma bolts rained down from elevated positions, rooftops, scaffolding, watchtowers. The Kryn had been waiting for them. "Cover!" Kane barked, dragging Patch behind a half-collapsed steel wall as rounds hammered into it. Steel pulled the pin on a smoke grenade and lobbed it into the open ground between them and their attackers. A thick red haze billowed out, breaking enemy sightlines. Ghost's voice came through, calm despite the chaos. "They've got high ground, entrenched positions. We need to move, fast." Kane gritted his teeth. "Reaper, Ghost, flank left. Steel, you're with me. Patch, keep moving." Sura crouched next to him, dust streaked across her dark armor. "I take it this wasn't part of the plan?" Kane's eyes were cold. Plans change. Steel detonated a charge against a rusted-out fuel canister, sending a shockwave through the scaffolding where 2 Kryn gunners had been stationed. Their bodies crashed to the ground, limbs twisted. Ghost fired once. A clean headshot sent another sentry tumbling from his perch. Kane moved like a hammer through the chaos, laying down suppressive fire as Reaper and Ghost pushed forward. Sura, despite not being part of the squad, kept pace, her movements sharp, her own rifle snapping off bursts with unsettling efficiency. A Kryn burst from cover, weapon raised. Kane pivoted, sidearm flashing. One shot. The Kryn's head snapped back, body collapsing. Steel rushed forward, shouldering another attacker into the ground before planting a boot against its throat and pulling the trigger. Patch, despite being pinned under debris, managed to lift his sidearm and put 2 rounds through the chest of a Kryn warrior trying to advance. The enemy fire wavered. They hadn't expected this. They had expected fear, surrender, maybe even retreat. What they got was humans. What they got was war. Silence. The smoke thinned, revealing the bodies scattered across the ruined landscape. The Kryn that weren't dead were dying. Kane stood, rifle poised, exhaling slow and controlled. Ghost crouched, reloading his rifle with one hand, the other pressing against a gash along his thigh where shrapnel had torn through. "We just lost any element of surprise." Steel wiped a streak of blood from his cheek, wincing as he flexed his left arm. The armor plating had taken most of the impact, but the kinetic force still left his muscles screaming. They weren't expecting a fight like that. Reaper exhaled sharply, rolling his shoulder where a plasma shot had grazed the edge of his armor, the heat scorching the fabric beneath. "Yeah, well, we're lucky they were bad shots." Patch sat back, pressing a bloodied hand against his side. The deep plasma burn across his ribs was ugly, but manageable. "Because no one fights like us." Kane ran a hand along his chest plate, where a slug round had cracked the reinforced plating. The impact had been enough to knock the air out of him, but the armor had held. Barely. He glanced at his team, battered, bloodied, but still standing. Sura stared at them. Her gaze moved from Kane to Steel, then to Patch, then to Ghost, whose legs still bled, and Reaper, whose armor was scorched black where plasma had nearly burned through. "You should all be dead," she muttered. Patch chuckled, wincing as he adjusted his stance. "Heard that before." Reaper sheathed his knife, stepping over a body. "They'll call for backup." Kane nodded. "Then we move, now." Steel flexed his grip on the rifle. "What's next?" Kane looked toward the factory entrance, still looming in the distance. His voice was steady. "We regroup, then we get Zalvarak." The team moved fast through the ruins, their boots crunching against the brittle ground. The ambush had cost them time. The Kryn knew they were here. That meant they had to act before reinforcements arrived. Ghost knelt beside a collapsed storage unit, visor flickering as he scanned the area. He pulled up a small holographic interface on his wrist, tapping through different signal layers. "There's something here," he muttered. Localized distortion in the comm grid. Weak, but intentional. Kane crouched beside him. "Scrambling?" "No," he said, fingers moving fast. "It's a relay, repeating an encrypted signal every 6 minutes, probably meant to mask outgoing transmissions." Sura leaned in, her bioluminescent eyes narrowing. If that's what I think it is, it's how they're coordinating security without giving away a direct location. Ghost nodded. Exactly. And if we backtrack its origin... His screen flashed, and a faint red marker appeared over the digital map of the city ruins. There. That's where they broadcasted their hostage proof-of-life signal. Steele let out a low whistle. That's our guy. The marker hovered over a massive complex near the city's outskirts. A former refinery, long abandoned, its outer structures crumbling under years of neglect. The problem wasn't the building, it was the terrain. Flat, open, zero cover between them and the entrance. Kane studied the hologram. That's a kill zone. Sura's expression darkened. If they see us coming, they'll execute Zalvarek before we even breach the perimeter. Reaper shifted his stance. So, what's the play? Kane's mind worked fast. Direct assault, suicide, infiltration, no natural cover. They needed a diversion, something big enough to force the Kryn to relocate their attention. We hit them from the other side, Kane said. Hard. Steele cracked his knuckles. I like where this is going. Kane pointed at the remnants of the industrial sector near the refinery. We set off a chain reaction, explosives, simulated weapons fire, anything that looks like a full-scale incursion. Make them think the UED sent in a bigger force. Sura tilted her head. And while they're busy scrambling to defend an attack that isn't happening? We go in quiet, Ghost finished. Steele was already checking his explosives. I can rig a few charges to look like incoming mortar strikes. If we sync the detonations right, they'll think a strike team is moving in on their flank. Patch tightened the strap on his med kit. And if they don't take the bait? They will, Kane said. They're mercenaries, not soldiers. They react to threats, not strategy. They'll reinforce whatever looks like the most immediate danger. Reaper smirked. So let's give them a show. Steele planted the first charge against a rusted-out fuel cache, layering the detonation with enough heat to make it unstable. He moved fast, planting another near a collapsed skybridge, rigging the debris to fall explosively when triggered. Ghost and Reaper set up hollow projectors, small tactical decoys that would mimic the heat signatures of a moving strike force. From a distance, it would look like multiple squads closing in on the Kryn position. Sura stood back, watching. You humans are insane. Patch smirked. You're just figuring that out now? Steele pressed the final charge against a half-buried pipeline, stood back, and checked his detonator. Kane's voice was steady. We hit them hard. We move fast. No second chances. He looked to his team. Once we blow it, we've got 3 minutes before they reorganize. If we're still out there when they do, we're dead. Everyone nodded. Steele held up the detonator. Let's make some noise. He pressed the trigger. For half a second, nothing. Then the world split open. The fuel cache erupted in a blinding column of fire, the shockwave ripping through the ruins with a deep, guttural roar. The skybridge followed, detonating in a violent chain reaction, metal screaming as tons of debris crashed down like a dying beast. Smoke billowed, thick and acrid, swallowing the ruins in a choking fog. The ground trembled beneath their feet as distant shouts of Kryn orders filled the comms. Sura listened, then smirked. They took the bait. Through Ghost's scope, they watched mercenary units mobilizing, scrambling toward the industrial ruins, weapons raised, barking orders. They're pulling half their security detail, Ghost murmured. That's our window. Kane gave a final nod. Move. The factory loomed ahead, its rusted metal exterior barely holding against time. Smoke and distant echoes of gunfire still rippled through the industrial ruins where the Kryn scrambled to respond to the fake incursion. Kane didn't waste a second. Move! The team advanced through the open ground at a dead sprint, staying low. Ghost peeled off first, slipping into the shadows, his rifle raised. No shots yet, just silent movement. Kane signaled for Reaper to break right, moving toward the external comms station. If the Kryn still had active relays inside, reinforcements would arrive fast. That couldn't happen. Steele followed close, his grip firm on the charge pack strapped to his side. The main interior corridors would be rigged with motion sensors or auto locks. They needed a quick entry. Explosives would do just fine. Sura ran parallel to them, her movements controlled but fluid, keeping her own weapon tucked close. She wasn't part of the team, not really. But at this point, Kane didn't care. She had skin in this, and she knew how to move. Ghost's voice crackled through comms. 2 guards, south entrance. They're lazy. I can take them. Do it. A muted thwip cut through the air. One body slumped over the railing. A second barely had time to register the sound before another round silenced him. Clear, he murmured. Kane pushed forward, stacking up at the now unguarded doorway. Steele, we're breaching. Steele approached. He planted the charge, thumbed the detonator, and stepped back. Boom. The door frame burst inward, sending a shockwave of debris through the dim corridor beyond. Kane moved first, rifle sweeping left, then right. Empty. For now. They were in. Reaper's voice came through next. Comms are fried. They won't be calling for help anytime soon. Kane barely acknowledged it. Good. Find the damn cell. Ghost checked his tracker. North wing. Heavy shielding. They want him alive. They moved. The corridors were claustrophobic. Narrow pathways lined with rusted pipes and dim emergency lights, flickering intermittently. Kryn bodies lay where they had fallen, thanks to Ghost's work. No alarms yet. But it wouldn't last. Steele motioned toward a reinforced door at the end of the hall. This is it. Kane stepped forward, checking the panel. Keypad locked, energy shield active. Steele flexed his fingers. I got charges. No time, Kane muttered. He lifted his rifle and fired point blank into the control panel. Sparks exploded and the shield flickered and died. Steele grinned. That works. They breached. Inside, bound to the wall by reinforced maglock restraints, Zalvarak lifted his head. His dark red skin was marred with bruises, one of his secondary arms limp, possibly broken. His piercing golden eyes locked onto them, narrowing. You. His voice was hoarse, but the disgust was unmistakable. They send humans. No time for speeches, Kane said, moving in. He pulled his combat knife, black steel, razor sharp. But as he thumbed a switch near the hilt, a pulse of kinetic energy hummed along the blade's edge, disrupting molecular cohesion for just an instant. With a swift stroke, he sliced through the locking nodes of the restraints. The mag locks flickered, then failed, sending the metal shackles clattering to the floor. Zalvarak stumbled, but Kane caught him with a sharp grip on his forearm. The alien tensed, resisting, but Kane didn't care. You can walk? Zalvarak's eyes burned with defiance. I do not require assistance. Good, Kane said. Then shut up and move. Ghost's voice broke through the comms. Kane, problem. A deep mechanical whirring echoed through the corridor. Then, a piercing alarm. They'd been spotted. A robotic sentry hovered into the hall outside, its optic sensor glowing bright orange. A shrill alert siren filled the base. Then came the heavy footfalls. Company, Steele muttered. Kane gritted his teeth. It was now or never. The facility erupted into chaos. The Kryn were fast. The humans were faster. Ghost's first shot shattered the sentry's sensor, sending it spiraling before a second round cored through its central processor. Sparks rained from its wreckage. Steele threw a fragmentation charge just as the first wave of Kryn enforcers flooded into the corridor. The explosion ripped through the front line, sending bodies crashing into the walls. Reaper moved like a shadow, blade flashing and silent, lethal. 2 Kryn fell before they even registered he was there. Kane dragged Zalvarak through the fight, pushing him forward. The general snarled, glaring at him. You do not. Not the time, Kane snapped, raising his rifle and putting 3 rounds into an approaching guard. They reached the outer corridor, bodies littering the floor behind them. The exit was close, but they had too many hostiles coming from all sides. We need a vehicle, Patch called out. Sura pointed toward an armored transport, parked just beyond the loading docks. six-wheeled reinforced plating. "Think you can drive that?" Kane asked. Sura gave him a sharp look. "Please." They broke for it, bullets and plasma whining past them. Ghost covered the retreat, dropping Kryn one by one, his movements mechanical, precise. Steel ripped open the vehicle's control panel, overriding the security lock. "Sura, it's all yours." She climbed in, engines roaring to life. "Move!" Kane barked. The team piled in. Zalvarak hesitated, his gaze flicking between the incoming Kryn enforcers and the humans who had just shattered his captivity. For the first time, he had no control. His eyes narrowed, then he moved. Steel slammed the hatch shut. "Go, go, go!" Sura floored it. The armored transport tore out of the docking bay, smashing through the perimeter barricades as gunfire erupted behind them. The Kryn were not happy. Kane gripped the side rails, watching as multiple pursuit vehicles roared to life, skimming over the terrain in fast, aggressive pursuit. Reaper exhaled. "Well, this is gonna be fun." Kane reloaded. "We're not out yet." The armored transport roared over the desolate terrain, kicking up a thick cloud of dust as Sura pushed the vehicle to its limits. The engine strained, tires grinding against the uneven, debris-strewn ground. Behind them, the Kryn were relentless. Kane braced himself against the cabin wall, glancing through the rear slit window. 3 pursuit skimmers were closing fast, their sleek hovering frames darting over the wreckage with predatory speed. Above them, 2 drones zipped through the air, their weapon systems already locking on. "Here they come," Ghost muttered, shouldering his rifle and planting himself near the open hatch. Reaper grabbed the heavy repeater mounted on the side, wrenching the gun into place. "Let's send them home in pieces." A lance of plasma fire streaked past them, sizzling through the air before detonating against the cracked earth. Another shot clipped the side of the vehicle, sending sparks across the reinforced plating. Steel cursed, gripping the wheel tighter as he swerved hard, narrowly avoiding a rusted-out cargo hauler. "If someone doesn't deal with those skimmers, we're gonna be roadkill." "Ghost, left side. Reaper, right," Kane barked. "Take them out." Ghost steadied himself, zeroing in. One shot. A crimson bolt lanced through the canopy of the first skimmer, blasting the pilot straight out of his seat. The vehicle spiraled, tumbling across the terrain before detonating in a bright fireball. "Next," Ghost murmured. Reaper wasn't as precise, but he didn't need to be. The repeater roared, spewing a devastating burst of rounds toward the second skimmer. Armor plating shredded, and the driver jerked violently before the skimmer pitched sideways and flipped end over end. A third skimmer dodged through the wreckage, accelerating. The gunner atop it locked onto the transport, plasma cannons heating up. Patch, still slumped against the cabin wall, gritted his teeth. He was hurt badly, but that didn't mean he was useless. Forcing himself upright, he gripped the heavy rifle from his pack. One shot. A perfectly placed rail slug tore through the skimmer's engine core. The vehicle veered sideways, caught an exposed metal beam, and exploded on impact. "Nice shot," Kane muttered. Patch groaned, slumping back down. "Yeah, next time, someone else can do it." But they weren't safe. Above them, the drones adjusted their vectors, tracking their movement with eerie mechanical precision. "Drones are lining up a shot," Sura warned. Kane grabbed his rifle and leaned out of the side hatch. He fired a burst, but the agile machines twisted mid-air, dodging the rounds with unnatural ease. "Damn things are too fast," Reaper growled, shifting his repeater's angle. Another plasma bolt streaked toward them. Impact. The rear engine blew out. The transport lurched violently, metal groaning as flames spat from the ruptured compartment. Sura fought the controls, but the vehicle was dying. "We're losing power," she shouted. Kane turned back to the others. "Brace!" The transport hit a jagged incline, momentum dying. The whole thing slammed into the ground, metal screeching as it slid through loose debris before grinding to a halt. The sudden stop threw them forward, weapons and gear scattering across the floor. Dust hung thick in the air. For half a second, there was silence. Then the distant whine of engines. The Kryn were still coming. Steel coughed, shaking off the impact. Anyone dead? Patch groaned. Not yet. Ghost was already pushing himself up, weapon in hand. We need to move, now. Kane kicked open the rear hatch. The landing zone wasn't far. The Raven was waiting just beyond a ridge, its silhouette barely visible through the dust storm. 50 meters, maybe 60. He turned back, no time to rest. Out, now! The team poured out of the wreckage, rifles raised, moving as one. Zalvarak hesitated for only a second before following, his expression dark. He was still weak, but he kept pace. Behind them, plasma rounds slammed into the wreckage, Kryn enforcers closing in. Too close. They had seconds before they were overrun. Kane fired over his shoulder, dropping the first Kryn in pursuit. Reaper cut down 2 more, bullets ripping through their armor. But there were too many. Another bolt streaked past, straight toward Patch. He didn't see it. But Zalvarak did. Without hesitation, the Rudrak pivoted, ripping a fallen rifle from the ground and firing a suppressive burst. The plasma bolt skipped wide, missing Patch by inches. The Kryn jerked back, caught off guard. It was the opening they needed. Kane didn't stop, didn't question it. Move! The Raven's ramp lowered, engines whining at full throttle. The ship was right there, but so were the Kryn enforcers, pouring in from the ridgeline, weapons raised, cutting off their only way out. Kane didn't slow, didn't hesitate. Covering fire, he barked, sprinting toward the open ramp. Ghost and Reaper dropped to one knee, rifles already snapping up. 2 shots, 2 Kryn down. Steele, still half limping from the crash, yanked a shrapnel grenade from his belt and lobbed it dead center into the advancing enforcers. Boom! A shockwave of metal and fire tore through the front line, shredding armor, ripping bodies apart, but it wasn't enough. The Kryn kept coming. Sura vaulted up the ramp first, grabbing the co-pilot's seat, already bringing the Raven's systems online. "Get in or get buried!" she snapped through comms. Patch staggered up the ramp, rifle still half raised. He was barely standing, bleeding through his armor, but he wasn't stopping. Kane grabbed Zalvarak, hauling him forward. The alien resisted at first, snarling something in his native tongue. "Not now," Kane gritted out, "unless you want to die here." Zalvarak's golden eyes burned, but he moved. They cleared the ramp, Reaper and Ghost the last ones in, firing until the doors sealed shut. The Raven lifted, turbulence shaking the cabin. Then the impact hit. The ship lurched violently, alarm screaming. "We're taking heavy fire," Sura called from the cockpit. Plasma blasts slammed into the hull, rupturing a stabilizer, sending the Raven into a spiraling descent. Steele cursed, slamming his fist against the bulkhead as gravity twisted. "We're not gonna make it!" Sura worked the controls fast, but the ship wasn't responding quickly enough. Kane gritted his teeth, eyes snapping to the viewport. Too low, too fast. "Brace for impact!" The Raven slammed into the ground, skidding violently, kicking up a roaring cloud of dust and fire. Metal shrieked as the ship tore across the landscape, bouncing off jagged terrain, before finally grinding to a halt. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was the crackle of fire, the groan of twisted metal. The taste of blood and dust clung to the air. Someone coughed, then another, a sharp intake of breath. Then, gunfire. The Kryn were already advancing, surrounding the downed ship, closing in for the kill. Kane forced himself up, blinking through blood and dust. Ghost groaned, pushing debris off his leg. "We're not dead?" "Not yet," Patch muttered, coughing. Zalvarak staggered to his feet, staring at them all. Humans, barely holding together, yet still moving, still fighting. His eyes lingered as Ghost pulled Reaper up, as Patch shoved a stim pack into his own arm, as Kane checked his weapon with steady hands, even as the ground shook with Kryn footsteps. They weren't giving up, even now, even when they should. The ship rocked from another impact. Sura's voice came through comms. "Weapons are offline, engines are shot. If we don't get in the air now, we're done." Kane didn't hesitate. "Then get us in the air. I'll buy us time." He moved. To the rear hatch, to the weapons locker. Behind him, Sura was working the controls, muttering under her breath. "Come on, come on!" Kane ripped open the locker, and there it was, a JX-99 high-impact rocket system. His fingers traced the smooth casing, his favorite kind of problem solver, or as he liked to call it, the BFG. He smirked. Big fucking gun. He moved fast, boots slamming against the steel plating as he reached the hatch. With a single kick, the door burst open, revealing the battlefield outside. "Any second now!" Sura shouted. The Kryn were there, positioned, weapons raised, energy cells glowing as they locked onto the Raven's exposed hull. They were about to end this. Kane didn't give them the chance. He flipped the activation switch, and the BFG's targeting matrix locked onto the densest cluster of hostiles. The barrel pulsed as the charge built. Micro-reactors lining the core shifted in sequence, stabilizing the trajectory. He fired. The rocket screamed through the air, a spiraling mass of superheated plasma and kinetic force. A Kryn commander's mandibles clicked in confusion. Was that a... No. Then the impact hit. A firestorm of devastation. Shockwaves ripped through the battlefield, vaporizing anything caught in the blast radius. The air itself trembled, a sonic boom rolling across the landscape. The Kryn were gone. Inside the cockpit, Sura gasped as the Raven's systems flickered back to life. "We have lift!" Kane barely had time to brace before the ship lurched skyward, thrusters screaming as Sura forced them into an emergency ascent. They broke atmosphere. The battlefield vanished beneath them. Inside, nobody spoke. Patch leaned his head back, exhaling through his nose. "We're alive." Steele gave a tired laugh. "Didn't think we'd make it." Ghost just sat there, still gripping his rifle. "We shouldn't have." Reaper wiped a streak of blood off his brow, smirking. "Yeah, but we did." Kane sat heavily against the bulkhead, finally letting the exhaustion crash over him. Then he felt eyes on him. Zalvarak. The Rudrak studied them all, his golden gaze unreadable. His injuries were bad, but he was alive. Because of them. Because these humans, battered and bloodied, never left each other behind, even when logic said they should. His mandibles twitched, a deep breath pulling through his chest. Then, finally, he spoke. "You are..." A slow shake of his head. "You are unpredictable, insufferable, and absolutely necessary for the Council." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. "You truly deserve your place, and I regret not realizing it sooner." A pause. Then, his gaze settled directly on Kane. "You have just secured another ally for humanity." Kane exhaled, tilting his head back against the cold metal. "Great." A long silence. Then, a slow smirk. "Guess that means we can finally let you in on some human secrets." Zalvarak frowned slightly. "Secrets?" Kane let his eyes close, exhaustion washing over him. "Yeah." A small, tired chuckle. "Like beer and barbecue." The Raven soared into the void, leaving only smoke and wreckage behind. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important. And I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.